Welcome to Film Majors. I'm your host, William Stewart with the Hoosier Network, and this is a show breaking down film of Indiana sports or some of the biggest collegiate games in the country at the time, and we learn why the game went the way it did. Now, the constant that we've had on the show is rivalry basketball games this semester, right? We had Indiana-Purdue twice. We had the Iron Bowl on the basketball court. Now, I could do it again. Alabama upset Auburn. They were back and forth. But we're not going to stop with the rivalry, but we're going to switch it. This time it's Big 12 battle between the Baylor Bears, who are hosting the number 3 team in the country, and the Houston Cougars. Roll it! Now, these two already played this season once. It was in Houston. The Cougars won 76-65 in what was a constant uphill battle for Baylor. But last weekend, Baylor was at home. They went back and forth with the Cougs. Ultimately, Houston won again. They swept Baylor for the regular season. They won on Saturday 65-61. But Baylor really made it a fight for the entire 40-minute game. So let's start our study, shall we? First play of the game, we're going to look at the Cougars and their offense, which has been very good on the season. Carlos Uzan, he's getting a screen from his big man, and Baylor's still trying to figure out how they want to play their screens. He's going to end up giving it to Liddell. Gets another screen, swinging around, throw it back down inside. He kicks it back out. And Cryer, there you go, 3-ball, his first one of the day. And that was kind of a constant. Cryer was really shooting the ball well today, but Baylor never really adjusts to it. We'll see if they do, but they don't. The next play that we've got is going to be the screen. Uzan gets the drive, and Baylor, again, they can't figure out how they want to play the screens. At first, they're hedging it. Now they're trying to go over it, but Houston able to drive, getting the early lead. Now, this was a play that the highlights got cut off. I don't know who was cutting them, but it was really a great play by Baylor. We're going to scroll back a little bit here to where kind of the end point of the play, the start point of the highlight is. Down in the corner, and got 32 down here. He ended up setting a screen up here at the top for the ball handler. The ball handler was up here on the wing. He came off the screen and that flare out to the corner. But Houston is so worried about the inside that when Jeremy Roach drove, their entire team, you can see, crashed. The only guy out here guarding, there's only one Houston defender guarding 2 people. So he has to pick between the lesser of 2 evils, giving up an open 3. Roach kicks it, finds Celestine in the corner, bury it. That was one of the few threes Baylor was able to hit in the first half. It wasn't a great day for Baylor from the three-point line. And now Baylor's in a man look on defense. This is something that I like, that I really enjoy what Baylor was doing, is their defense was very versatile in this game. They know that they weren't going to score a lot. So their idea, make sure Houston doesn't score a lot either and stay in this game. Because obviously they didn't do that very well in the first game. So they're in a man look on this. Uzan gets a screen at the top, but Baylor instead hedges it with their 2 men right here. It's just play the half, see what happens. And then as that screener, he rolls down, there's already 2 guys down here because they switched to a 3-2 zone in the middle of the play. Nunn didn't Now, the problem is the outside man over here, Nunn, he plays up, and then the big man doesn't rotate down here to guard the guy standing open in the corner. The late contest, and guess who it is again? It's Cryer. That's 2 for 2 from 3. Next play we're going to look at, Houston inside, and since Cryer's the only one that's hit a 3 at this point for Houston, Baylor's focusing down low because they know Houston can use their size and kind of beat up on Baylor, which is what they were doing up to this point. There was the 2 threes that Cryer hit, but that's really all Baylor had, or Houston had, from beyond the arc. So they're still kind of in their 3-2 zone. There's 2 guys down here in the paint, making sure that Houston just can't drive on them. But instead, kick it out because still the outside man over here just can't pick between who he wants to guard because Houston's offense set it up so well that there's 1, 2, 3, and there's still 2 guys stuck down low in here. Leaves an open man in the corner. That 4th player unaccounted for, or 5th player unaccounted for because the 4th sitting in the paint with the ball. As an open look, and it's Uzan, and he hits the only 3 of the first half for Baylor, who's not L.J. Cryer. That graphic kind of pops up perfectly. Cryer was 4 for 4 at this point. He hits another one later in transition, but this is a play that Baylor was running really the whole entire half. I'll watch it play out here because it's rather long. And it looks kind of familiar because Indiana does the same thing. They just wrap around constantly. It's guys just constantly going one direction or another. It's somebody goes this way, and then somebody goes this way, and somebody goes this way again. But their objective, what I was assuming, is that they're just trying to get guys open. They're trying to discombobulate this Houston defense to just try and get open looks, which there wasn't much in the highlights to pick from, but when I was watching the game, it worked kind of constantly. And they've got guys who can go at Houston's defense on one-on-one, like VJ Edgecombe, one of the top players in the draft projections. You know, getting him one-on-one is something that Baylor wants to do. He's the main focal point of their offense, and it was working well for them. He was just driving, able to get open shots because they were having Houston's defense all over the place. Now, in this possession, that's not highlighted because Edgecombe gets his pocket picked, but Edgecombe also recovers. Get up there and get it out of there. I was watching this. When I watched this live, I had an entirely different reaction. I think I jumped out of my couch and moved it back 5 feet because that play was nuts. This is the last play of the first half we're going to watch. Baylor's tied with Houston. It's nearing the end of the first half. And Nunn was working one-on-one here. Drives, and all of Houston's collapsing. That's not what I wanted. There we go. Nunn collapses, or Nunn gets the entire Houston defense to collapse practically. Eyes are all inside. And what does that leave wide open? Wide open three. Langston Love. Drill it. Baylor went up 3 and took it into halftime because, as you see now in the second half, they're up 3. Yeah, for 3 minutes there was no scoring. It was rough back and forth, but it was a tough defensive battle. But the takeaways from that first half is Scott Drew and Baylor, they know that Houston's defense is the best in the country. Everybody knows this. It's a pretty constant and general consensus. But Baylor was giving their best effort just trying to discombobulate them. We saw where they had the wraparound about 4 different times. They threw a screen in there just to try and get VJ Edgecombe the ball one-on-one. He got his pockets picked, but like I said, they ran that, I don't know, probably 6 or 7 times in the first half until they at least got an isolation that they liked and a matchup that they were picking. Now, it wasn't their greatest shooting night, but they were still able to convert inside. And it's kind of the same way on the other side. Houston didn't have their greatest shooting night from the 3, apart from TJ Cryer, because he was 5 for 5 in the first half. But Baylor also played into that. We saw on the one play where they had their 3-2 kind of collapsing on the guy on the post. He was able to kick it out, and Brand hit their one and only 3 outside of Cryer in the first half. But that constant collapse on defense, making Houston shoot, is really a good adjustment by Scott Drew and his coaching staff because they knew Houston was going to beat them inside because they just had the size. But Houston on defense, I mean, this is all stuff we really noticed and we already knew. They were on-ball pests. They were forcing the bad shots. There was a lot of bad shots from Baylor late in the shot clock in the first half. There was the handfuls of turnovers that they caused. We saw the VJ Edgecombe one with that disgusting chase down, but I'm sure Houston wasn't counting for that one. But the last thing in the first half is Baylor's plays just weren't really executed perfectly. We saw Edgecombe get stripped right there. He got his pockets picked. And some of the looks that they got just weren't what they wanted because Houston was so perfect on defense, just causing disruption and havoc almost every play. Now, we'll see if Baylor was able to make adjustments to their plays and see kind of what happened in the second half. They ended up only scoring, both teams ended up scoring 60 at the end of the game. Right now we're sitting at 30 apiece, so draw what conclusions you want from that if you weren't able to watch this game. But let's get back into the highlights, shall we? The first play we're going to look at, it's Baylor starting the second half for us. It's Nunn in the corner, and he's getting a screen from his big man right here. He's going to set it. And Houston's going to decide to double because they don't want to give up this baseline, so they're going to trap him in here. But it's really a great play by Nunn. Feeds it right through the gap. Tough lay by 15 there, able to get a bucket. That was Omir on that one. Next play is going to be Houston. And they were able to get the switch because Baylor still couldn't decide how they wanted to play screens. They thought they had the size to match up, and they didn't. They're just backing down the point guard. I don't know why you would switch the point guard on, but here we are. And instead, Omir tries to just double down on it and cause some sort of mishap for Houston. They don't. Cryer ends up with the ball, almost gets his pockets picked. That's a tough shot. I mean, you just can't do anything much about that. But still, Houston was able to use their size to their advantage because they knew they had that over Baylor. Next play, we're looking back at Houston's offense, the drive, a screen here because, once again, Baylor has changed what they're doing on defense. The screen is set right here. 3 is totally iced out of the ball. Houston's carrier just drives, and 15 is just watching. Like he's stuck. I don't know, he's stuck in molasses. I'm not sure what. But still a tough lay because the help defense was there. But it's a great lay by Emmanuel Sharp. Next one we're going to look at is really good defense because, once again, Baylor has decided to just fight through screens. This time it was able to work. 3 stayed in front of his man the entire time, got a hand in his face, caused the miss. Baylor didn't follow the shot, but still. That's the one thing Baylor's kind of been wishy-washy on, is that they really haven't got pat down what they want to do on screen defense, which is something that we've seen from some of these other teams that are really streaky, such as Indiana. They can't decide what they want to do on defense. The communication isn't totally there like they need it to be. But there's times when it's there, and they know what they're doing, and they play it perfectly. But we'll see if Baylor can figure it out. They won't. I'm just going to spoil it for you. But next play we're looking at, it's going to be Houston on an inbound. They're looking for Malik Wilson here, and he just uses his size. Able to call it ISO here. Gets down low, and a great roll here by his big man. Wide open flush. There's another 2 for the Cougars. Javier Francis with a really, really quick, high IQ play there. And now here's the top draft prospect. I haven't shown much of him because, well, there just hasn't been much to show because it was a lot of ISO buckets and the chase down block. But this is a really good play here. He calls for this screen, and he notices immediately his man's going to step out here, and they're going to hedge it. So immediately he sees that, 1 step, and he's gone to the rack. Good layup. You see the athleticism. He kind of just floated to the basket there. Last play we're going to look at, Baylor getting the ball again. And as soon as 15 gets this ball inside, I'm going to slow it down really quickly, or really slowly, I guess, how that works. I don't know how it works. 15 gets it down low, and you immediately see every single Houston defender stepped inside. And 15 had great awareness on this play. He notices it, backs down, sees the help defense, kicks it, 1 more pass. It's Celestine again, 3 ball. Now, Celeste's 3, he was able to pull it into a 1-possession game, but Houston was able to run away because a bulk of their second half points came from the free throw line, and that's kind of how the game ended. But that's something that Houston's offense did really well, was just get Baylor in foul trouble late. 3 of Baylor's starters ended up with 4 fouls because Kelvin Sampson made it a point in the second half. He made that adjustment that Houston's offense needed to use their size and just get Baylor in foul trouble. They really attacked them inside, and it worked. But the thing I didn't like was Baylor got away from their zone defense. They communicated it excellently. We saw that in the first half when they switched it mid-possession because their man defense was getting beat by the pick and roll constantly. The 3-2 was able to help them out. Sure, the 3 ball hit them a few times, but it wasn't anything really to worry about. But another thing Houston did really well was their defense. They got 10 less shots off than Baylor, but they still came out on top because of their defensive ability to force bad shots. They were drawing fouls at a great rate. They used the bench because they had, I think, 8 guys with 15 or more minutes. And there was just consistent play from everybody on Houston's team. But Baylor, the other thing was they just didn't have a good night shooting. And they still almost beat Houston. Their splits were 34, 31, 75. And they took 60 shots, shot 34%. Half of their shots were threes. They literally took 33s and hit a 10th of them. So Baylor it really wasn't their night because of Houston's on-ball defense. They were such pests. They were causing so many bad shots constantly. The one thing to keep in mind, if Baylor is on, say they hit half of those shots, they beat Houston by 10 or 15 probably in this game. They can be dangerous, especially with VJ Edgecombe, number 7. He's a top 5 projected pick. And we saw the defensive communication and how elite it was in the first half. They were switching from zone to man in the middle of the possession. It's insane for a college team to be doing. And at most times their communication is elite, but we saw the few instances where their pick and roll defense just got picked on. They would leave a guard out kind of just in no man's land to get hit by 3 or 4 screens, and it would be a layup. That help defense was there most of the time, but still, there just wasn't much communication at a few times. But the other thing is Houston's they're a top team in the country for a reason. They're a strong candidate for March Madness, and they're going to be a number 1 seed for a reason. Houston, they were just such great defenders, and as the offense wasn't there tonight, but they can still come out and give teams 70, 80 points. They did to Baylor earlier in the season. And like I said, their shooting wasn't as great as it normally is, but thankfully they had one guy hitting so many threes. One final thing on Baylor is depending on how their Big 12 tournament goes, they could sneak in as a last 4 team in. And if they're hot when they come out of that Big 12 tournament going into March Madness, it could be a dangerous team if they're on a run. But if they get a bad night like this, Baylor's not going to have a great March. But that will do it for this week's lesson. Thank you for joining me. I'm William Stewart with the Hoosier Network. Until next time, have a great week, and God bless.